Thanks so much, everybody. Hope everyone is shoveled out. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are here to officially have a little kickoff meeting for phase 2 of the Hutchinson River Watershed Plan project. My name is Megan Long. I'm a ecological restoration project manager here at Save the Sound. I work exclusively in New York. Where I'm also joined by some other colleagues from Save the Sound who are going to be presenting information and helping gather all of your feedback as we talk about what we've already done in the Hutchinson River with phase 1 in Westchester, which a lot of you were already a part of, and what we're going to be doing for phase 2 of the project. If by any reason we did have an interesting technical glitch last month when I did a webinar. So for any reason we have a technical glitch and the webinar closes, just rejoin and we'll take care of it that way. So I'm going to pass the baton around the room for some folks that Save the Sound who you'll meet throughout this project, starting with our Watersheds coordinator, Nicole Davis.
Hi, my name is Nicole Davis. I'm based out of our Connecticut office, but I do a lot of work with Megan and Sarah in New York, especially on the Hutchinson River Watershed Plan. And I recognize many of you from phase 1, and I'm excited to kick this off again. I'm going to kick it over to Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sara Cernadas Martin. I am the director for the New York Ecological Restoration Programs. And I'm here for support, but Megan and Nicole have this totally under control. So you're in very good hands.
Next, we'll pass it over to Kiara.
Hi, my name is Kiara. I recently joined Save the Sound. I am the Climate Justice Fellow, and I'll mainly be taking account of your input and comments.
Yeah. And for those of you, which is I think almost everybody who have been receiving emails or letters from the generic Hutchinson River email address, Kiara is also the other person behind that in addition to myself. So many of you have already been emailing with her. And then also part of the project team are Allison Rugilla, our associate soundkeeper.
Hi, everyone.
And hopefully he was able to join successfully. I saw David Abreu, also from the water protection team, join in as well.
Hey, everyone. Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having us.
And then all of this wouldn't be possible without our events team, specifically Mrs. Amanda Van Dyne. So thank you so much, Amanda. Amanda's been the one who organizes these meetings and webinars for us and make sure that we're following everything along and getting things recorded. So thank you, Amanda. Okay, I am going to share my screen with our presentation. Bear with me for just one moment while I get that up. We have got just some background information about, what we've already done, what we're going to be doing, and then we do have some Mentimeter for some interactive feedback that we're hoping to gather from all of you. All right, fingers crossed this does not freeze on me. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go to the presentation. All right. Do you all see just the full presentation without any kind of weird presenter notes or anything? Fantastic. I see a thumbs up from Allison. Thank you. So like I said, this is our official kickoff of phase 2 of the Hutchinson River Watershed Plan. So phase 1 was completed in 2024. We are extending that the plan down into the Bronx. And at the very end of this, in addition to some designs for priority sites, we're going to have one unified plan that is going to be representative and actionable for the entire watershed. For those of you who have not yet had the joy of working with us at Save the Sound, we are a regional nonprofit. We are based in Connecticut and New York, and we have a variety of expertise and teams. So we have a legal arm. Kiara, Sarah, Nicole, and myself are with our ecological restoration team. Allison and David are with our Center for Watershed Protection. So our goal is to fight climate change, save endangered lands, protect the Sound and its rivers, and work with nature to restore ecosystems. And that's both for the natural environment and for people too. So specifically with the ecological restoration team, we have a really cool role at Save the Sound, and that means that we get to see projects all the way from ideas and just conversations to plans like this one, to engineering designs, and then eventually to boots on the ground, shovels in the dirt, actual real life projects that will actually create lasting physical change. Really quickly, just about our team, a lot of you are familiar with Nicole and the great work that she has already done. We have a really diverse team of engineers, biologists, planners. We have experience in river restoration, green infrastructure, watershed planning, and coastal restoration. And we're also able to play a variety of roles, including facilitator and convening, being a partner and helping to develop projects, and then also being a project manager, like for this grant, for example. We've done welcomes and introductions. There's quite a few of us here, so I think we're going to save all of your introductions to a little bit later when we get into our group discussion. But Nicole and I are going to cover just some basics about, what is a watershed plan, and including what has already been done for phase 1, where we're starting from, and then talking about what does phase 2 look like. And what I think is the key part of this meeting is hyping up the steering committee and hoping to get as many of you as possible to join and be a part of that and help us guide this to make sure that we have a quality plan and product. So with that, I am going to keep clicking, but I am going to mute myself and I'm going to leave you with Nicole for some slides.
Thanks, Megan. I'm going to do just some quick level setting to make sure everyone here kind of is speaking the same language and knows kind of what we're thinking about and where we're going from here. And the first is kind of the mile high view and just making sure that everybody knows what a watershed is. Something I've kind of learned over the years that not everyone has a firm understanding of what it is. And it's a pretty simple concept. It's any area of land that collects water. So in the Hutchinson River, which is the picture on the screen, right, it's this kind of green area that's bounded to the east by Rocky Cliffs and to the west by the Hutchinson River Parkway. Sorry, I was getting the name wrong. But it's any water that drains to a body of land. And so the cool thing about a watershed is that no matter where on earth you're standing, you're in a watershed, right? It's water that connects us to everything that goes on. So in the areas that we're in, watershed flows into the Hutchinson River, into Long Island Sound, and then out to the Atlantic Ocean, where it funnels around the globe. And so what we do on land is really impactful to how it impacts our water quality. And so really thinking about clean water being good for everyone, it's kind of why we're doing this work with the framework of a watershed. And the other thing that's important to note about a watershed is that our rivers and our streams don't respect political boundaries, right? So just because you live in a town, it doesn't mean that the water from your town is all going to the same place. Most of our municipalities span multiple rivers and multiple streams. And so it's really kind of this unifying force beyond what humans have already done. And so next slide, please, Megan. And the whole purpose of looking at a watershed for the watershed plan is to think about different pollutants entering our water bodies. And the focus of the watershed plans that we're developing for the Hutchinson River watershed is on non-point source pollution. And when you're talking about a river and stream, there's really two basic types of pollution. And this is really boiling it down. We know it's more complicated than that, but there's point source pollution, which is something that comes out of a pipe, right? And those are kind of known things that tend to be permitted, like water treatment plant discharges, right? Like our sewer plants are permitted to put X amount of water into our rivers through this pipe. It's same from industrial areas that are discharging to our rivers. So anything that can be traced to a pipe. And then there's non-point source pollution, which is kind of more amorphic, right? It's anything that makes it to the river via water. And what we're really thinking about in the most basic terms is stormwater, right? Which hits our land, it moves over the land and either goes into a sewer where it enters the river through a pipe, which is where it gets a little tricky because stormwater pipes are considered non-point source pollution because that water is coming from all over the place. Or anything that's hitting the land and then just kind of making its way over surface flow or through groundwater into our rivers is non-point source pollution. And the reason that the distinction between these two things are so important for watershed planning is one, most point sources are permitted. So if we're identifying point sources of pollution, that's usually something that should be taken care of by remedial actions, right? There's legislation that governs all of that, what can and can't be done. And so that's when we should be calling in the state or the county enforcement officers to kind of take care of it. But non-point source, that isn't really governed. And Megan, if you can go to the next slide. And so within the context of a watershed, the reason that non-point source is so important is within a watershed when it rains, right? Water flows on the ground, but it picks up all the bits of things that are on the ground, whether that's litter, bits of tire, just dirt, fertilizers, right? Everything is carried into our rivers. So water kind of rolls over everything like a steam water and carries it with us. And what's been shown over the past several decades is a strong correlation between developed land or impervious surface, right? Surfaces that prevent water from infiltrating into the ground, and pollutants and poor watershed health or poor river health. And so, especially when you're talking about developed areas such as the Northeast, there's a lot of impervious cover. Impervious cover are your roofs, your driveways, your sidewalks, your roads, um, tennis courts, basketball courts, and in some cases, even turf lawn, right, can function as an impervious surface because the ground below that grass is so compacted just from constantly being trampled or driven over that water can't actually filter into it. And so the focus of the Hutchinson River Watershed Plan is to really think about these non-point sources of pollution and how they're contributing to impaired waters or impaired waters within the Hutchinson River. Next slide, please, Megan. And so the whole idea is to take all of the collective knowledge that's in this room and within the people who live and work within the watershed and kind of set up a framework of how we can all work together to improve water quality in the Hutchinson River. And I'm making the assumption, but I think it's a safe assumption that everyone on this call cares about the Hutchinson River, right, in one way, shape, or form, which is why you made time in your day to do this. And so the idea is that we're going to work together to identify existing water quality issues, and kind of consolidate efforts, right? Most of these people in this room, or I should say many of the people in this room, are doing things within the Hutchinson River already. And so kind of making sure their ideas all align and that the plan that we put together is something that serves the collective group that is moving this plan forward, right? It's not just going to be Megan and I that are writing a plan so that we can do it. The idea is that it's something that we can hand off to the community, right? To the municipalities within the watershed, to the partner groups that are already doing great work on the ground, and even just neighborhoods and resident groups that want to kind of improve their neighborhood and kind of green the areas around them in the most efficient way possible. Um, and so the EPA has set up what's called the 9-element process, which kind of outlines this long steps of things that would go into a good watershed plan. And what it really boils down to is talking to the community, right? The people who live and work within a watershed, and making sure that their ideas and interests are represented. To kind of look at the data, right? There's water quality data from the state, from Save the Sound, from other groups, from municipalities and sewer treatment plants that's already being collected, and kind of bringing that all into one place. So we're looking at the watershed holistically, right? From the headwaters down to the bottom, and thinking about how we can all work together to solve the problems that are leading to pollutants. We all know that there's contaminants in the Hutchinson River. The state's identified impairments along the entire main stem of the river. And they've kind of outlined what those are and where the potential sources are. But no, we're going to take that a step forward and kind of figure out where that is and what can be done about that to have a clean river, both for human use and for animal use. And ultimately have something that's safe for fishing and swimming and for us to use the river as the people who live and work on it want to. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of the rough schedule. We are very much at the beginning of the process for phase 2. And I'll talk about phase 1 again in a minute. So phase 1 really looked at Westchester County. So we divided the Hutchinson River into kind of 2 phases based on a political boundary, just because that was an easy place to draw a line, not because of any significant reasons beyond that. And so we worked to kind of complete that section of the plan first, starting in the headwaters and looking down. And now we're moving into phase 2, which will focus on the Bronx and New York City. And so this is our first meeting, right? This is the kickoff meeting for phase 2. And so it's really an exciting part to kind of get to know the players in the watershed, the people who are really interested and active, and hopefully are interested in tying together these 2 pieces, right? Because within a watershed, and again, why we start in this context is water flows downhill, right? It starts in Scarsdale and makes its way all the way down to Long Island Sound. And so if we're not all working together, it doesn't matter how much work Mount Vernon does and how much work the Bronx does. If people upstream aren't doing their part to kind of protect the river, we're still going to have polluted water coming downstream. And so it's really important to kind of all work together and hopefully support ideas outside our own kind of neighborhoods and our own municipalities. And so we're kicking off the project today. We are in the process of hiring a consultant. We sent out a request for proposals to consultants within the area who've experienced doing watershed plans, and we're reviewing those and having meetings with the consultants right now and are working on getting that so that we will have a contract in place to really start the work in March. And then we're going to start in earnest working from March. There'll be some kind of heavy times where we're talking about a lot of information, and then some kind of down times when we're doing our research, and then we'll come back to the steering committee and the public at different intervals throughout this. And the whole idea is that we will have one full plan for the Hutchinson River by June of 2027. And so that's the goal we're working with. It's about an 18-month, not quite turnaround, which is a good amount of time. It's enough time to talk about and dig into things, but not get what I like to call planning fatigue, where we've talked about the watershed so much that people are tired and just want to do something. And then what's kind of not in this, and I'm just going to touch on it really quickly because I've said planner fatigue. The other thing we're working on as part of this plan is hoping to identify one priority project that we can move forward so it's almost ready for implementation by the time we're done, so that we have something actionable at the end of the day. And I love that Megan used that term at the beginning, because that's really the whole idea with this entire project is we want a plan that is actionable, something that people are excited to take with them and do something with. I have no interest in spending 18 months to write a document that no one's ever going to look at, right? The idea is that this is something that's useful for the people in the watershed, not just save the sound. And so that's the other reason we're soliciting feedback now, is making sure that the people who want to take this plan forward have a voice so that the plan is usable for them. Next slide, please. And so what's already been done in the watershed was, believe it or not, starting back in 2022, which feels like so long ago. We started working with Westchester County to kind of do the first phase of the watershed plan. And it's because it's a complex watershed. The Hutchinson River watershed isn't very big, but it's skinny and narrow and heavily developed. And so there's a lot going on within this watershed. So being able to take the time to really delve into the different nuances and things that are going on between the headwaters and Long Island Sound and Eastchester Bay is huge. And one of the biggest things that makes it difficult is the parkway. The parkway follows the river the whole way, which really kind of creates this own kind of confined section within the watershed. So being able to really think about that and how that impacts water quality, how that impacts use of the river, and how that impacts downstream bodies. The other thing that's complicated about this watershed, now I wish I had the impervious surface map here, is to really think about how land use has been developed. The Hutchinson River is a very developed watershed, which means that there aren't a lot of opportunities for protecting land to save use. What we're really looking at is how we can retrofit things to kind of restore a natural ecosystem that can protect the river as best as possible. And that's a little bit more complicated than if we were talking about a less developed watershed. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's complicated. And so as we move into phase two, which will focus on the Bronx, we're looking at kind of the same concept and the same framework for how we're going to do this so that we have one cohesive plan, right? It's starting with the community involvement. It's kind of digging into what studies have already been done, and then moving into what kind of retrofits can be or we can do to actually improve water quality in the river. Next slide, please. And so part of that was robust community input, which several people on this call were part of, and I'm glad that they're here today because I feel like having those consistent voices throughout is going to help to unify the two documents. And we're going to end this meeting the same way, where we're going to ask a series of questions, kind of what's important in the watershed, what do you want to see changed, and kind of start using that to kind of coalesce goals and objectives within the plan and really kind of hammering on what's important to the people on this call and the people in the river, or in the watershed. Next slide, please. And so we took ideas that people put out there about what was important, what they wanted to see change, what was available, who should be at the table. And we kind of put it together into a memo that looked at opportunities within the watershed. Where can we really focus on projects that'll have the most impacts? And we kind of looked at several different opportunities, really focusing on hotspots, meaning singular places, like a scrap metal yard or an oil and gas plant or a large parking lot where we can have a lot of impact for one big project, where are the real problem areas where pollutants are entering the river. Then we looked at stormwater retrofits, and that's going back to kind of that first thing I talked about with impervious cover and non-point source pollution. Where can we interrupt the flow of stormwater into the river untreated? Where we can kind of take out some of those known water quality impairments. How can we keep, trash and fertilizers and nutrients out of the river? And then the next step was also looking at reforestation or restoration opportunities, right? Where are there opportunities to increase vegetation on the bank, to kind of green, not just the river or adjacent to the river, the riparian area, but how do we green the neighborhood, knowing that those also have benefits to the river, even if it's far away, right? Because those trees and shrubs and native plantings take up water before it makes it into the river. And so it's really kind of interrupting this cycle of kind of pushing all the stormwater we can into the river as fast as we can with no thought for the benefits. How do we slow it down? It's kind of the same idea as like the slow food movement. It's thinking about locally how we can manage water where it falls as opposed to piping it out to the river as fast as possible. Next slide, please. And so that really gives us an opportunity to look at, how do we improve the ecology of the watershed and use it as a way to enhance the function of the river. And so we looked at land use. We looked at where pollutants, mainly suspended solids, bacteria, nitrogen, and phosphorus were making its way into the river and how they were doing it the fastest, right? This is where we're using the data to kind of drive the decisions we're making, and kind of identify where priority projects can have the most impact. And so phase 2 will have a similar framework using this kind of watershed modeling, working with the consultant we're hiring. And this kind of broke out how different pollutant loads, excuse me, were related to different types of land use. And the reason that we use kind of land use is that data is widely available and there's strong correlations tied between these bacterial or pollutant inputs and these different types of land use. And that all comes back to impervious cover, and how things are situated within proximity to the screen. And you can see on this map, how we broke the watershed up into slightly more digestible pieces. So we broke the river up into smaller sub-watersheds, and that really gave us the opportunity to identify where specific opportunities were, not looking I call it stem to stern, right? Not looking all the way down the river, but kind of looking at this piece and this piece and this piece. And by breaking it down into those bite-sized chunks, it kind of gives us a better picture of what pollutants are entering the river where. And then the final phase, I believe, next slide, was to pull all of this together into a draft plan that had implementable projects. And so this is where we ended up in March of 2024. It was a draft watershed plan just looking at Westchester County. And we had recommendations for all of Westchester County, identifying specific projects that addressed hotspots, stormwater retrofits, and reforestation opportunities within the watershed. And then we kind of prioritize those projects. What's the low-hanging fruit? What can we turn around really quickly? And what's going to have the most impact? What's kind of longer term projects, either things that are going to take a long time to get all the players on board that we should kind of slowly ramp up to, or things that might be more costly. And so just getting the funding in place might take a little bit of time, and kind of prioritize them in like high, medium, and low priority, and really kind of looking at how we should start implementing projects in the plan. Not saying that this is the only way to do it, but this is kind of a good framework. We also suggested who might be the best lead organization, whether it was an NGO, a non-government organization, or a partner group, whether it was a municipal group, right? If it was something that was easier to come, from the public sector, or if it was a private sector opportunity, right? If we had willing landowners or business owners, or if we should start building those relationships. And then we also estimated the cost for each project. And the idea is to take these recommendations and kind of marry them into the Bronx, and then take it a step further so that we really kind of have pull-out sheets for the projects that we really want to move forward the quickest. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan to start talking about phase 2.
Thanks, Nicole. And feel free as we're going, we'll have time to actually turn on videos and turn on microphones and talk as we get a little bit further in the presentation. But if you have thoughts or questions or comments that you want to get out there now, feel free to utilize that chat function. Oh, come on. There we go. So as Nicole said, this was a lot of work that happened in phase 1, but it's just one part of the watershed with how it was chunked up. So now we're going to talk about what we're going to do for the Bronx and New York City. So phase 2 is going to use pretty much the same approach and extend this plan down into the Bronx. So all those things that Nicole talked about, identifying hotspots, identifying challenges, getting all the players in the room, we're going to follow that same process, and it's going to be additive. So the really neat thing about this is that we're not dropping everyone from Westchester. We're keeping everybody and we're adding to the group. And some things that are going to be relevant for the entire watershed are that we're actually going to be producing 8 conceptual designs by the consultant for some of those priority projects that are going to be representative of the entire watershed. So we got close to that in phase 1, but we're going to take those a little bit further. So at the end of this, we're going to have actionable items or things where it's really clear, okay, these are the priorities. Let's go forward with funding to keep developing these. And there will be one project in the Bronx that will be advanced to a 90% design. And we do have some funding in hand here at Save the Sound through Assemblymember Michael Benedetto's office to implement a project in the Bronx. So that's kind of what we're thinking on the project side. And we just wanted to also note that phase 2, we do have a QAP that is recently approved by EPA. But phase 2, the funding has been made possible by congressionally directed spending through New York State senators. So just acknowledging that, it takes expertise and also takes funding to make these projects happen. And we're really lucky that we have so many people who care about the Hutch. These are, and a lot of the images that we're using today, these are in the watershed plan. So if you're curious or if we've wet your whistle, that full plan is available on our website. So just clarifying, we're going to be extending down. That was probably a duplicate slide I put in there. And we're going to be we're now at the phase where, as we're hiring the consultant, we're looking to expand the steering committee and make sure that we're getting as many voices as possible and making sure that the Bronx is heard as a part of this process. It includes many of you who are NGOs. I saw a lot of colleagues from New York City Parks and New York and DEP, also state DEC, elected officials, and anyone who has had an interest in the Hutchinson River, whether you live there or you recreate there or you work there. We want to make this a big tent, a big process. So don't feel that you can't serve on the steering committee because, oh, I'm not an engineer. I'm not an engineer either. But if you're interested and you care about the Hutch, that should be the biggest qualifier. And if you have the time, that should be the qualifier if you'd like to serve on the steering committee. We had some spots on our timeline that were starred, and that is just recognizing that for folks in Westchester County, where your time might be limited or you might be locked on spending resources depending on the geographic area, there are parts where we understand that people may not have as much capacity to weigh in on things. But the starred things, especially the priority project designs and the unification and the ultimate, singular plan, that's where we really want to make sure that we have all voices in the room, and we encourage folks to definitely tune back in if you find that you have to tune back out just for other priorities. And just acknowledging and reiterating Nicole's point that a healthier Hutchinson River is going to take all of us. It's not something that the state can do alone. It's not something that we at Save the Sound can do alone or something that a private landowner can do alone. But all of us working collectively can make a really big impact. This is just this is from the plan. These are all the organizations and individual people and municipalities and agencies that served on our phase 1 steering committee. We've invited everybody from phase 1 back to serve again on phase 2 as well. So as you're looking at this list, and we're happy to share out, who we've added to it since, for those of you who got our email blast, that's included hundreds of people and organizations. Not organizations, hundreds of people, probably dozens of organizations. But taking a look at this, if there are people that are missing that you think would really be interested in this, that would be a great fit, that would care about this, by all means, please send them our way or send us their way, and we'll get in touch with them because we really want to expand this list. In addition to getting out on fun days and on stream walks like this, on beautiful days with like what Nicole's doing here on the Hutchinson River, what we're looking for the steering committee, it does include some responsibilities. Save the Sound is going to be setting up and organizing bi-monthly meetings starting in April of this year. And during those meetings and throughout the process, as we get feedback and we make progress with the consultant on what we actually have on the ground, we're hoping that our steering committee can help us review deliverables and help us guide prioritization and site selection. So if there is something that is really critical or a voice that we're missing, we want to hear about it, because Nicole and I are helping to manage the plan and foster it, but ultimately it's going to be the community who is going to have final say. And we're hoping that you can all serve as community connections. We do have funding for several in-person meetings and events. Like we're actually going to gather out in the wild, out in the sunshine. So we want to make sure that people have the opportunity, even if they don't want to serve, they don't have the capacity to serve on the steering committee right now. We want people to feel that they can always come talk to us or come check in with us and find out what's going on. So next, Nicole and I are going to be guiding you through a Mentimeter exercise. For those of you who have used Mentimeters, you can scan this QR code using your phone on a computer. I've tried it, it works. Or you can go to menti.com and just enter this code 59667141. And that is going to take us to another way to gather questions and input. So those leading questions that Nicole mentioned earlier. What is important in the watershed? What are things that you want to change? What do you want to see in the plan? This is just another way. It also comes out in a pretty cool word cloud. So it's really a neat real-time way to see what do your fellow citizens think, fellow community members think about what is important and what we should focus on. Alternatively, you're welcome also to just type things in the chat or to share out using the raise hand function. So with that, I am going to stop sharing for a little bit, or I'll keep it up for another 20 seconds or so if you want to scan this QR code to bring you to Menti. And we're going to go through that exercise together. So I'm going to give it another 5. And I will stop sharing. Okay.
Here we go. We've got the first question in real time.
I'm also seeing there are some questions and comments in the chat. We'll go back to that timeline again, and that timeline is just like it's pretty rough, but we can get more detailed if folks are interested in that. And we have reached out to, I think, the new president at Federated Conservationists of Westchester. But if there are individual folks or members that you'd like us to reach out to, we can do that as well. Yeah, another point for access on the river. And just as a full disclaimer, I haven't entered anything just yet, so I didn't want to taint the pool. Yep, more for water quality, clean water, wildlife restoration, resilience.
And I just popped the Menti code
Oh,
and
thanks so much.
site in the chat, just in case anyone didn't get it the first time around or needs to get back in.
Yeah. So the neat thing about the word cloud is that as the larger the words, basically that's you all saying the same thing. It's more people having the same thoughts. So like accountability, I like that one, accountability. So I think it's a really neat way of visualizing, like, this is something that not just, I care about it, but others also care about it, the larger that word gets.
And you should be able to enter as many words as you want to. It's not limited to 1 entry per person.
Yeah. Should we give it another about 2 minutes or 90 seconds, Nicole? We'll move on to the next one.
What I was just going to say, Megan.
Ah, great minds think alike.
And I've also, just so everyone knows, I've set this up so the link will remain active for 2 weeks after the meeting. So if there's things that come up that you didn't think of today or someone else that you'd like to have participate in the word cloud, they can just kind of jump on and go through the prompts on their own.
Yep. Oh, and I think we have a new word from the chat, but oh, there it is, regulation. and enforcement as well.
I think as we're slowing it down, I think I'm gonna switch it over to the next slide, but you should still be able to keep entering on slide 1.
Yep. And thank you, Kiara. So as you guys are populating words in the chat, Kiara is adding that to the Mentimeter, so you'll be represented on that as well.
Yeah, and then the second question is really, what would you like to see changed in the watershed? We know there's some really fantastic assets in the watershed, but what do you see as the opportunities or the problems or things that need to be addressed? I love how big water quality just popped up.
Oh, water quality is so large. Yeah. Less flooding and more green space. Those can go hand in hand.
More just putting this in the back of people's heads as we're thinking about the project going forward with less flooding specifically. If you have specific areas going forward, that's really helpful for us to know whether it's intersections or kind of general areas within the watershed. That'll help us kind of target because that kind of localized flooding is something that isn't always tracked regularly. So that's something that usually comes down to local knowledge and the people that really experience it the most.
Yeah. And I'll add too, one thing we're going to do with our consultant as soon as we bring them on board is that we're going to be looking through everything that has been done that's, that we can reasonably get our hands on. So, in addition to the phase 1 plan, thinking about the Resilient New York studies that the DEC has been producing, we're going to look at those. We're going to be looking at available FEMA data. We're also our consultant will be helping us come up, for those of you who are around for phase 1, you may remember that there was a map basically where you could point to areas of concern or just like thoughts you had about the watershed in a particular spot. We're hoping to replicate that again. So in addition to meetings like this, we're also going to be doing more direct community outreach to get folks' opinions and bring them along. Oh, absolutely. Sarah, if you want to unmute, you are welcome to plug that directly.
Hi, sure. I can try. Sure, yeah. So My Coast New York is an app, a free app to download, and it's basically a portal that New York Sea Grant helps manage and organize statewide, and folks use it to collect photo documentation of flooding and storm events and effects from those things. And so, it can be used in a number of different ways. Some places use it to kind of document changing shorelines and water levels and things like that. But I'd say the primary way we see people using it in New York, at least to my knowledge, is again to document that local flooding. So it's a really helpful way to gather evidence of issues and hotspots like we were talking about in one place. And basically you download this app, you snap a photo with your phone safely, of course. And then you can upload it later and it reads the metadata to see where it was, and it asks you a couple of very simple prompts to fill out if you can. You can estimate the depth of flooding, etc. But then all those photos get linked to pretty much real-time conditions. So the nearest tide gauge, for example, to kind of help understand, is this flooding above and beyond what we might expect given the tide stage or the rainfall, etc. So it does a little bit of analysis like that. And like I said, it's just really helpful and easy, intuitive app to use. And I could certainly ask one of my New York Sea Grant colleagues who manages it. I'm sure she has examples off the top of her head, but different communities around the state use it in different ways. But yeah, so if you haven't ever heard of it, definitely check it out. And I can be more prepared to give a better pitch next time. But again, I think it's an easy way for folks to document issues and get that information all in one place to then take to use in projects like this or to have evidence, of issues to present to your local boards and things like that. So,
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
sure.
More responses coming in.
Yep. And in the interest of time, I think I'm going to give it 1 more minute.
Yep. I was also thinking a minute.
Great minds.
We'll have to be like a team on like oh gosh, I'm forgetting like the game show, but we should try a game show one of these days, Nicole. I wonder if we would clean up. And I will say on the press time, and because our wonderful colleague Amanda is here who helped us set all this up, that is something that we're going to be doing in-person meetings where we have Kiara's on board. She's going to be helping us greatly with not just digital outreach, but on the ground outreach. And this won't, this won't be the only time you hear about it.
Yeah, I'm going to say everyone get your last thoughts in for this moment, and I'm going to change the slide.
Yep.
And the last thing is, what do you want to see in the watershed plan? And I know that that's a difficult question, but really kind of thinking about, are you looking for, like, if you were gonna do a project right now in the Hutchinson River watershed, what would it be? What do you want to see? Or is there something you want to do but feel like you need some kind of help and guidance, or would kind of like to partner with someone on? So those kinds of things. So maybe it's a water quality testing, which is exactly what I'm talking about. Or is there a project at a school you're thinking of, or you want to see a bird blind next to something? These are great implementation next steps. Yeah, things that you might need to help yourself, to help a group, not necessarily yourself. Sorry, I didn't mean that to be so prescriptive, but to help move something forward. And also thinking about this is, right, this is the way I like to think about a plan is where we are, we're at the first step. So right now, the sky's the limit. Like if your ideal project in the Hutchinson River would be a floating greenhouse on a barge that travels from Scarsdale all the way down to Long Island Sound on a weekly basis and gives out cabbages to the first 10 people that get there, like now's the time to think about that. I call it my planning brain is where we're at, which is where physics, property rights, and cost don't exist. Right? Let's start with the big picture things that we really wish we could do, and then think about how we can winnow those down into actual actionable projects.
I really like the floating cabbage greenhouse, not just as a aficionado of cabbage, but also as someone who works on dam removal in New York. Like I'm like, some dams that might need to come down to make that greenhouse possible.
See? That's why you start big.
Yeah. I really like the inclusion of the word boldness. Like I don't know if you put that in there as a plant, Nicole, but I like that idea of like being bold about like what our goals are. I find a lot of times, sometimes when we're working, especially on urban systems or just like highly developed watersheds, that people get really negative because it's not going to look like the Elwha River out west or like the Klamath. Like, it's just different, but no less deserving, in my opinion. And I think I did see a cleanup opportunity. Save the Sound does have I think it's might be specifically a coastal cleanup, but I think in the past we've also sponsored inland stream cleanups as well. So that is something that has happened before, and we can make that happen again.
And also just a small plug for the Hutchinson River Restoration Project, who does have activities all year long, walks and
Yes.
cleanups, for people who are just looking for something a little bit more tangible right now.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and I'm going to give it 1 more minute, and that gives us about 10 minutes to kind of have more of a discussion or anything else that people want to bring up before the end or questions.
I also really like the inclusion of fun, not just community activities, but fun.
Right, and we're gonna stop it there, but I will keep this open, so feel free to keep popping words in. And you should be able to access or go back to the other two prompts for the next several days.
So that being said, we wanted to, use the last 10 minutes here to turn it over to you all. If you have thoughts that you wanted to verbalize, if you are ready to commit to the steering committee, absolutely now we can do that too. But really this time is, for you all to ask questions about the process, what's going to happen, and where you would like to be involved.
Also, if there are people or organizations that you know that you think would be very interested in this project, you can email us their contacts or drop it in the chat too.
We're also pretty good detectives, so even if it's just you should reach out to somebody in this area, we can do that as well. For example, from phase 1, I think I've had the parking lot at the Dave and Buster's on my list, like since my first public meeting when I joined Save the Sound in this project.
There was a question to go back to the timeline.
Yeah, we can do that. Da, 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 da. Is this sharing fully, Kiara?
Yes.
Awesome. And we can provide more detail on like kind of what these steps look like. So one thing I'd like to note is that these are just the start dates for the project. A lot of these things they have different time lengths and they're going to flow into one another. They're going to be happening concurrently.
So I'm sorry, Megan. I see the stars. Never mind. Okay. So
Yep.
toward the end for sure. Hopefully throughout, but definitely the end for
Whoops.
those of us.
Yeah. And
Got it.
definitely we want people to feel like we want people to be as involved as they're able to be. Obviously, more voices, the better. But if that's not possible, we just kind of, wanted to flag, especially as we get down to talking about like identifying the projects, implementation options, and the final plan. That's especially where if folks in Westchester are like, oh, I'm really time limit on how much I can participate. Like this is kind of where we really recommend that this is the spot. I'll stop
Just
sharing.
piggybacking off of that, right? This is the steering committee is not an all or nothing type of thing, right? This is really please participate as you can or as you are able or as you want to. If you're a modeling aficionado and all you want to do is dig into the pollution load model, then we welcome that feedback at that time.
Absolutely. And even if you can't join the steering committee, your feedback is always going to be welcome.
And there will be general opportunities as well.
Yes.
We'll have several public meetings for just anyone interested in the river.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. And while we all have you here, since so many of you were involved in phase 1, if there were spots where we ended on phase 1 that you're really excited to pick back up, this is also, we would love to hear that as well, and that would help give us more guidance. you all are the experts. Like, we serve watershed wide, but we're really here to make sure that we're amplifying, your thoughts and your concerns.
Yeah, Joel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so on what Megan just said, I'm from Westchester, and I know the phase two is more the Bronx, but just how far down south in Westchester did you actually get? Or if you can be a little more specific. I've read the plan, but I just wanted to sort of hear it.
Yeah,
I mean, have you touched all the main points that are in from Scarsdale all the way down to each municipality through Eastchester
I
down
was
to
gonna say,
Pelham?
I'm not gonna say we hit all the main points. We hit as many of the points as we could from Scarsdale all the way down through Mount Vernon. Really kind of starting at the county line, or stopping at the county line, but it's the sorry, I'm blanking on the road, the Route 1 bridge there, is where we went.
Okay, because I am representing the Lake Innisfree Conservancy,
Oh.
and I know that when I read the report, from the phase one report, you didn't really have no field assessments were really done at Lake Innisfree because it's difficult to access, and so I certainly would like to be involved in getting you access to Lake Innisfree because it is a big source of unfiltered municipal stormwater coming in,
Yeah.
and then going back down into the Hutch.
No, that would be fantastic. Yeah, because the problem we ran into there is so much of that is private property. So trying to get down in there, it was hard to just get permissions within the timing that we had.
Right, and we've done our own testing on our own, and we have reports that we can share with you.
Very cool. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jane Curtis with FCWC.
Hey, Jane.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah. I participated on the phase one steering committee, and we came out with some wonderful and very specific recommendations about areas that needed remediation and what those remediations should involve. And I think it would be helpful to evaluate whether those have been implemented, and if so, who and when and how.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we mentioned, the phase one document this is essentially by the end of this, we won't have a phase one and a phase two. We'll just have a Hutchinson River Watershed Plan. And as we go through that, especially where we've already identified priority areas, like you mentioned, Jane, if there have been changes or projects that are, in progress, we're going to mention that because we want this also to be up to date. There's no sense in if we know something has changed, there's no sense in us not updating the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Kiara and then Achi.
Yeah, this is a question from Kat. Can you talk more about the actionable priority projects for phase one?
Yes, and I should be able to talk more specifically about them. Right now, we have just kind of a pullout section at the end that kind of lists, I think it was 13 projects that we kind of got to kind of the precursor scanning. And well, I can send you the link to where those are. And so what we did was we started with between 15 and 20 projects in each of those categories of hotspots, stormwater retrofits, and reforestation. And then through kind of criteria that was developed by the steering committee, we screened those and kind of identified between 3 and 5 projects by type or in each of those categories that were identified as priority projects. And then we further delineated those projects. So looking a little bit more deeper at what the drainage area or what the green space within those areas looked like to kind of start talking about what the needs would be to design that project. And so for phase one, that's where it stopped. And so the idea is that once we get to that stage in phase two, we'll kind of take all of the projects from phase one and phase two and kind of identify 8 projects from within there and that we'll develop concept designs for. Does that start to answer your question? I'm sure there's a lot more that you're looking for there, but
Melissa and I actually walked it all the way to Scarsdale. And there were certain areas Innisfree comes to mind that we couldn't get anywhere near because we had to drive around. But forget a barge up there. Sorry about that. But you can get some other things up there. It's pretty messy,
It is.
really.
Maybe it's a kayak that we drag over our shoulders is what it really looks
Yeah,
like.
you can't get a kayak in there until you get
Yeah.
past Innisfree. So just so everybody knows. Oh, the other thing is the parking lot is pretty awful. It's at Stop and Shop or whatever it is. But even worse is the bus depot. The school bus depot is just past there. If you drive the first drive in that you can drive past or across the street from the shopping center, you'll hit one of the largest bus parking lots, school bus parking lots that you've ever seen. And I just shudder to think of the amount of plastics coming off those tires when they pull in and out.
You need industry access. You're talking about sending a kayak. I can help you there.
Okay, great. Absolutely great, because that's what we missed.
And knowing that Melissa's done the whole river is also really helpful. She's going to be a great resource as we think about kind of tying things together and what else we should be looking at.
Yeah, I'm the other co-chair for the Hutchinson River people. And if you want to contact us, you can just use the Hutchinson River Restoration site, which I think Barbara's on somewhere here.
And Jasenia had also a good question. We have a generic email address that we've set up. So like, as you're thinking about folks that might want to be involved or might want more information, please send them that email address. That way it's something that Nicole, Kiara, myself, Sarah, the entire project team has access to that. And just in case one of us, gets overly busy or goes on maternity leave, for example, that way your emails don't get buried. And we do also have a website specifically about the watershed plan where you can find the phase 1 plan, all of the documents that we pulled from today, and that's also where we'll be updating and adding more documents too. Thank you, Jasenia. Well, if we have sold you on the steering committee, or if you just want to stay involved, please email us, let us know. We'll even take like verbally right here, like, yes, sign me up. I want to be a part of this. If not, we will still probably, if you don't want us to email you, also please let us know that. I don't like cluttering up people's email boxes unnecessarily, but that being said, I think we are winding down. We'll stay on for another couple minutes, but aside from that, you'll hear from us as we're looking to set up the first official steering committee meeting in April of this year. Awesome. You got it, Barbara. You got it, Ben. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join. We're looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for coming.